Hey, so welcome to another vlog. This one's going to probably be a bit more of just a personal life vlog than a Riftbound vlog. So if you're here just for Riftbound stuff, probably skip to the middle bit. There's me talking about some preview cards. But honestly, the last couple of weeks hasn't really been very Riftbound focused for me. So I just wanted to talk through a little bit about what's been going on in some time off for me and how I've been spending my vacation time with Paro and my cats and my family. So yeah, if you have a Riftbound, as I said, jump ahead because the last couple of weeks have been fun. I took a trip last week to Palm Springs over in California, which is the first time I've taken vacation in quite some time to actually go travel somewhere. One of the things about traveling every so often for work is it can be really difficult to want to allocate time to go somewhere else that isn't home in order to have a vacation. So yeah, I went to visit a friend of mine, Monica, and see her family and see where she lives and kind of spend some time out there, which also includes meeting her adorable dog, Chuck, who I'll make sure to include some footage of as well. So yeah, really nice to get out, see a different part of the country. I've never actually been to Palm Springs before. Spent quite a lot of time in LA. Basically was there for like a month back in 2013, living in the Team Dignitas house. But yeah, never over to Palm Springs, over to the desert, which I know people say is like one of the most queer places in America. So really interesting to see a different type of environment for America compared to where I'm used to. I spend quite a lot of my time in America down in the south on the East Coast, so being in the desert on the West Coast is quite different, which is really cool. So one of the most interesting things I did during my time there was go to one of the national parks with Joshua Tree, which for me was kind of like a significant individual moment because I don't talk about it very much, but I only passed my driving test a few years ago, so learned to drive like late on in life compared to quite a lot of people. And Joshua Tree is a national park that you can actually drive right through. So that's what we did one morning is got in the car, just drove from one side of the national park to the other. So for me, I'm like, that's a pretty cool, feels like a significant personal thing to be able to do something like that. And I feel very privileged to be able to do that as well on a trip and have that kind of experience that not a lot of people get to do from the UK, which is not lost on me, which was really fun. Other than that, spent a lot of time by the pool. It was 40 degrees, so really needed to keep cool throughout the day. Honestly, one of those trips where it's like you can't be out in the middle of the day. There's a saying in the UK of like the only people that you'll find out in the sun in the middle of the day is mad dogs and Englishmen. And despite being Welsh, I guess that makes me not an Englishman for the purposes of being out in the sun. So good time though, good time overall. And I feel quite relaxed coming from it, which is the important thing as we head towards another set of events and a busy preview period. And you know, a couple months worth of Riftbound on the horizon as we kind of align there with China releases. We're only a month behind once Unleashed comes out. And speaking of Unleashed and previews, I did some first impressions of some cards during my trip because I wanted to get some kind of like in the moment feeling on how some of the preview cards appeared to be at first. So I'm gonna show some of that footage right now. I'll edit it in now, and by the magic of using DaVinci Resolve, you'll be joining me in Palm Springs. All right, so it's Wednesday, and we've had a lot of revealed cards. So I just wanted to go through a few and see which likely to be good, which ones I like the look of. This isn't going to be a comprehensive like tier ranking of everything. This is purely just what I think, looking at some of the sets. So I'll probably put them up on screen somewhere there. So first one, Jin Murderous Artist, cost 4 and 1 recycle. In Fury for 4 might, deflect ganking. When I move, add 1 power, 1 energy. That is, I think everybody has already said, going to be extremely strong. I mean, the fact that you basically just can get half of an extra turn for the amount of resources you have, insane. I mean, looking at situations where you just have combat tricks available, you basically cannot always bluff that you have something up at this time. One of the reasons why Annie was really hard to play against was she was never counted out, and this, when Jin goes into a combat, is basically never counted out. It's like they could always have something that is 1/1 in order to go aggressive. So very difficult to play around. I think this is going to be a card that is going to make people a little bit mad. I think Jin might make people quite frustrated to play against. We'll stick on Fury. Vi hot-headed. Important thing to know, so it's 4 energy, 3 might with deflect, 2 and a Fury rune, double my might this turn. Importantly, a couple things here. Doesn't read reaction or action, so you have to do it just like the original Vi, like recycling things from the trash. You have to do that before you go in. You have to do it at like slow speed on your turn. However, double my might this turn with no restriction. It doesn't say do it once. It doesn't say, you know, anything that is a restrictive thing. Now, I guess the thing you have to be careful of there, it is going to put a trigger on the stack, so you could easily smoke screen your way. You know, Stupefy is going to be able to resolve anything that will minus it beforehand, like Frigid Touch, for instance. Kind of cuts this effect in half. For Vi, the player doing it, you're going to have to spend a lot first in order to do it. If your opponent's tapped out, you're going to create crazy amounts of might for Vi on that. But it could be a card that is a good finish, could be coming in from the sideboard in certain matchups, just like we saw the original Vi with the Vi Ride the Wind combo. So interested to see how that goes. Some of the more interesting cards out of Fury. I'll keep scrolling through. I've got them sorted by rarity. Blue Sentinel. Your hold effects trigger an additional time. So a lot of people talking about that for Ari. It'll be up there, so I'm not going to read all the power and might for everything, and energy, for instance. Shield 2, I don't think this card's going to be as good as people expect it to be, or that people were hoping it'll be. Happy to, you know, eat my words on that if it comes to it, but Blue Sentinel is one where I'm like, maybe there's room for it in RE decks, but that line is already, you know, the decks, you only get 40 cards. That's one of the most interesting things about Riftbound to me, is like a lot of the decks don't have room to kind of change what you're doing at certain positions. So it'll be interesting to see whether that one actually comes through. A lot of people were wondering whether there's like the Ari one-turn kill, kind of like the equivalent of the Lucian deck, but this time from holding rather than conquering. Holding's a lot harder to do. That's one of the other things. Let's stick with Mind. LeBlanc everywhere at once. Backline, which is a new mechanic for this, which means they take damage last, I believe is the how it reads. I've got the fancy artwork version here, so I don't have the rules text. Your temporary effects at my battlefield don't trigger. I think the reason this card isn't quite as good as I would like it to be is the limitation on battlefield. It's not your temporary effects don't trigger. It's battlefield temporary effects don't trigger. So interesting. I want to see where that goes. I want to see how that card actually ends up being played. LeBlanc as an entire deck, as an archetype, I think is really interesting. I think has potential to be very strong, but who knows how it is going to be. Scrolling through, a card that I think is a bit of a bait, and most players don't need to worry about, but it's more of a free-for-all. Somebody will make this card work in competitive once, and everyone will lose their mind, and that is Gutter Palace. At the start of your beginning phase, if you have exactly 4 cards in hand, exactly 4 units at battlefields, you win the game. And it has tap to discard 1. In fact, it's discard 1 and tap. Play a 1 might bird unit token with deflect. Again, that's not reaction speed. You can't have that trigger of the Gutter Palace go on the stack and then discard from 5 down, or to play a bird. So you have to have done that on your previous turn. Also, I'm pretty sure, we don't have the rules clarified yet. I'm pretty sure if this Gutter Palace trigger goes on the stack, you still need to have, like, it has to resolve with 4 of everything, is my guess. Normally that's what would happen in other card games. And in other card games, when you get cards that read you win the game, they tend not to be amazing in competitive. They tend to come with different versions of limitations that are hard to reach. Like, one that is played in Pioneer, at least used to be in Magic the Gathering, is Approach of the Second Sun. You had to cast it a second time in order to play it, and it was an expensive spell. It was the entire deck based around having enough mana to play it early in the game. Just a difficult one to make work, and I have a feeling that this is going to be surprisingly difficult to actually keep, because you have to play it, then you have to have the exact board set up as you want, and your opponent has to have no gear removal, no unit removal, and no way of discarding from your hand, which I feel like is too late into the game to actually make that work. What else we got? I think everybody lost their mind over Baron because it was the first card that was revealed. I think we kind of have seen that things are not quite as desperate of worrying about what's in the set so much. I think the only interesting thing is when the rules discussion comes out on the 30th of March, whether you'll have to conquer all 3 battlefields if there are 3 battlefields, and how that'll affect things. But Baron, certainly like an Aurora target potentially, but I mean, again, the deck is really, you can't add too many units into a deck like that, because if you don't hit your ramp, if you don't get your cards to get you to Aurora, then you just end up with a handful of like Volibears. That's been the worst part about playing Aurora since having the deck, is the number of games where I will just mulligan into Volibear, and it just happens, and you just sit there with the Volibear in your hand for as long as possible. Now that's an interesting one. It means I'm gonna skip forward quite a bit to find a bunch of yellow cards. I'm looking for Rift Herald. Let me just actually search for it. Rift Herald. I don't know whether this is going to be good, but there is like a world. There's a world where I'm like, do you play Aurora Poppy? I don't think it's good, but I'm looking at what orange-yellow cards you can play, because I like the look of Rift Herald. I think it probably doesn't work as well as I would like it to. But for instance, I was just talking about having Volibear stuck in hand. The Death Knell effect of Rift Herald, just allowing you to play something from hand, is really interesting. However, I think the first ability in this is not particularly useful for Aurora. You can essentially stop yourself drawing units that you don't want, or playing units that you don't want, but with Aurora you always want the unit, right? So you don't want it to go to hand, so you have to put it to the bottom of the deck. So it really depends on what the entire lineup looks like. Alongside Rift Herald, the card Sacrifice, I think is a really interesting one, especially comboed with a few other things. And let's take a look at this in a second, where it's sacrifice your killing a friendly mighty unit, so it has to be a high might unit. You get to draw 2, channel 1 rune, exhausted. This is as a reaction. I already think this is strong. Allows you to play around enemy spells, any enemy abilities that are going to try and kill units either via damage or via kill effects. Allows you to pick and choose when your things actually die. I think this becomes a lot stronger when you pair it, for instance, with Rift Herald, Sacrifice, and Mirror Image for LeBlanc, the signature spell for LeBlanc. So choose a unit, play a ready reflection unit token to your base. It becomes a copy of that unit, give it temporary. So, for instance, in a world, and I haven't done the math here, so I'm just speculating if this is even possible. Like if you mirror image something like a Rift Herald, you get the readied token version of it. You can then move that token version to a battlefield, which will give you the trigger from Rift Herald, allow you to put another unit into your hand. You can then sacrifice the Rift Herald, allow you to play a unit from hand, draw 2, channel 1. It's a lot. I would have to look at how many resources that actually takes, but the fact that you get to contest a battlefield, replace the unit, replace it with cards, like put a lot of things onto the battlefield, is one of the reasons why I think LeBlanc is like one of the champions that I'm looking forward to checking out in this set. And one of the really interesting things for me, just it's a different play style that we haven't really had in the game so far. Likewise, I think, Ivan, I'll put the legend up, and the champion, the one that cares about like typal units. At least that would be the term that we have in Magic for it, where it's like if it's a dog, a cat, a poro. I think it's a bird as well. I don't have it in front of me, but that's a really interesting one. Lilia focusing on playing like sprites from the legend, really interesting. And then I think everybody is a little bit worried by how powerful Diana looks right now. Weirdly, I think Diana, until I thought about it, I was like, this set, maybe people won't call for bans so much on certain cards. I mean, we've obviously had a lot of people talking about Cold Shot, for instance, or whether it's going to be banned. I did an entire video on it. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out here as well. And I was like, this set, not seeing so much stuff that cares specifically about Cold Shot, like where specifically, okay, you're gonna bolster the same decks that were using the Miracle package. Now, don't clip that and take that just as the way I feel, because there's a lot in this set I think that actually will play around it. But up until that point, I wasn't particularly worried. That is until Diana's package of legend spells champion came out, because Diana Lunari, the champion, chosen champion, yeah, I think this is problematic. If I can clip the tweet, Kuvi, I think it was tweeting about how 3 energy 0 power units are problematic. I totally agree. To be able to either go second because your opponent has won the dice roll, or whether it's you're on an obelisk of power. Like there are a lot of times where you get to play for 3 power, or 3 energy, sorry, without getting punished. And Diana Lunari, I've hopefully had it on screen for a little bit now. When a showdown begins here, you may pay 1. If you do predict, which is essentially, I think we call it surveilling in Magic, which is you can recycle, I guess that's actually scry. Because, yeah, okay, so that's scrying. Predict, you can send it to the bottom of the deck if you want. If it's a spell, draw it. Yeah. That's imagining that you essentially get to pay 1, look at the top card of your deck. If it's something like a stack deck, if it's something like a Cold Shot, you're going to get just another tool to cycle through your deck. Another tool to dig deeper into your deck and get things the way you want it. I don't know exactly how that'll play out. There's a few other ways I think that the Diana deck is going to be interesting. Moonfall, I think, is such a cool card. I think this card is going to be really strong. The fact that you basically get to watcher everything at a battlefield, and you get to move an enemy unit to a battlefield is always very strong, and the fact that blue and purple get that is interesting. I think the other thing I see from Diana that it doesn't seem to be updated here. I might have to cut a little. I'm pretty sure the Diana champion, the purple one, yeah, Diana no longer human. Ambush, so you already get to play it at reaction speed, which is already scary. When you play a spell, give me +2 this turn. If you turn 1 Ravenbloom, move it to a battlefield. Turn 2, you don't necessarily pass, but like every turn after that, if you're holding the amount of resources available to either play a Diana or pump a battlefield that has multiple like Ravenbloom students and Dianas, like this is a very scary combination where like we saw Alan just make ridiculous size Ravenbloom students, or at least like strong enough to be able to deal with large battlefields and have enough spells to go over the top. This is just another tool that's exactly like that, this time potentially from the Chosen Champion zone, which I think makes it even more deadly. I'm not going to be able to go through every card here. I probably will do a follow-up video on other stuff that I have missed. This doesn't necessarily mean that I have like gone through everything and decided that these are the best cards or not, because I think there's some cards that I haven't touched on at all. We obviously have, where is it? What is it called? The purple spell, everybody is losing their mind on Star-Crossed. I think I have to go over this spell. I will start by saying I think the spell is going to be good. I think it's hard to say, hard to like understate how a spell that reads return an enemy unit to their hand, you know, it's a version of that. This one I think has a couple of downsides that Rebuke doesn't. The upside is of course reaction speed. So you basically always can look at utilizing this at the best possible time. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to like wait till the point where Rebuke is, you know, Rebuke being action speed means you can use it, but it's not as flexible as a card like Star-Crossed. However, and this is the big but, that means I don't know that everybody will be quick to swap this card. And I don't think that every time that you would run Rebuke, you would run Star-Crossed. I think they're similar but distinctly different cards, and that is the fact that you have to return a friendly unit to your own hand as well. That is one issue with it, which for a lot of board states is not an issue. If you, for instance, have an Ezreal in base, or you have an Ezreal at a battlefield, it allows you to be a little bit more active with cards like Ezreal. Allows you to just send it back to hand and get one of the strongest abilities in the game of, you know, draw 2, discard 1. So again, not always a downside. Likewise, if you can like return a Fizz, you can then Star-Crossed again, return the, you know, Fizz obviously will recycle it. There's no infinite loop with that, but the fact that you get to essentially recycle some of the strongest abilities in the game is massive upset. However, there will be every so often 1 or 2 situations where you either don't want to return something or you have nothing to return. Like being behind and having no board presence, a deck like an Ezreal, or we'll see whether Diana is the same, a deck like that, if you're behind and you can't actually have board presence, then spending all your resources on replaying an ability is not necessarily as good as you would like. It's kind of like it's not a card that's going to stop you from losing from that situation. However, that is not to say that it is a bad effect. I think it's a very strong effect, a very good effect. And the other tiny caveat is this spell is defiable. So that already is a problem. Defy is going to be as ubiquitous in the game as it was before. The fact that it's only 1 power, 1 recycle means, yeah, you can get this defied, and that is another problem. Matchup dependent, obviously only certain decks are going to be able to run Defy, so this card, as I said, still going to be strong. People are losing their minds over it. I don't think it's as good as people think it is, but I do think it's going to get played. I do think people are going to get really annoyed by this card. I do think it is on the very much the highest scale of annoying cards. In Magic, we had the card This Town Ain't Big Enough. There is a distinct difference between this card and This Town Ain't Big Enough. This card does not have a may part of this or an up to part of this, whereas in Magic, This Town had return up to 2 units, and they could be friendly, and if it was friendly it would reduce the cost of the spell. The fact that you have to target both of them to be able to cast this spell, I have a feeling it's gonna play out that it doesn't matter if your friendly unit is still there when the spell resolves, because we go into like do as much as you can territory at that point. But to be able to cast this spell, you need to have 2 valid targets, one of yours and one of the opponent's. So I think people will get annoyed by that card. I'll do another video at some point. I've still got cards like Smite that I have to look into and really determine. I think that could be a really strong card. I'll do it now because I've thought about it enough. Smite, I think, is going to be kind of like must run at a minimum in the sideboard. It will help with a number of decks that want to do graveyard recursion, because really key thing for newer players, the smite damage is not what has to kill a unit. If you smite a unit and then it dies in combat after, it's going to be banished. It doesn't go to the graveyard, it doesn't go to trash, nothing else like that. Smite, that effect is going to stick on that unit for that turn. It specifically reads this turn. That effect has been used in Magic quite a lot. It comes up surprisingly often because it'll do things like it'll overwrite death knell effects. So for instance, if you smite Rift Herald, the yellow card that I showed earlier, you won't get the death knell effect because it's instead of dying. If it would die this turn, banish it instead. So really important to know. That is going to overwrite death knell effects. Anything that reads when I die is not going to trigger with smite. Nevertheless, I've been yapping for 20 minutes. This will probably be the middle part of a video. I don't know what this is going to go into. Maybe you'll get some holiday footage of me as well. Otherwise, that was some interesting cards from Unleashed, and I am looking forward to getting these cards in my hand and playing with them soon. Okay, so yeah, didn't cover every card in that because at that point we're only halfway through preview season anyway, and also I was in the middle of vacation, so I hadn't seen every card at that point. So there's been a few more since that filming took place. One of them I think I have to mention as an Aurora player especially is the Elder Dragon card that got released. This is an immediate play in Aurora, which is by no means any kind of analysis. It's just everybody looks at this card and is like, damn, that's insane. Immediately replaces Volibear. Volley gets kicked out of the deck. Just the fact that Elder Dragon just comes in, clears up to three units out, and then just sits at a battlefield and can just basically turn any single combat in your favor just by the effect of having 1 point of damage is enough to kill a unit. So really interesting to see how that's going to affect things in the game, and see really in the prevalence outside of Aurora as well whether it'll be good, because I think the combination of Vilemore plus Elder, people are already trying it online, people are already trying that within the Master Yi shell, and I think it's actually going to be incredibly strong. We'll see what happens if there are bans or anything like that coming. We'll see whether Aurora manages to survive through it, but it does look incredibly strong. Another card that was released in the meantime was Pike, one of the legends, which Purple didn't need another good legend, but it is certainly getting one. And I think the flicker, like bounce aspect of Purple is really interesting. The fact that Purple also get a card like Bone Skewer, which I feel like is missing the text signature spell Pike on it. Bone Skewer to get information out of people's hand, plus then potentially pull a unit. I think obviously there's times that it's going to whiff. There's going to be times where you opt not to take something out of your opponent's hand. But I mean, Purple had enough control over the board anyway. I don't necessarily think that they needed control over the opponent's hand. And the fact that it's not even a Pike signature spell, like it just can be played in anything. Like Draven did not need this card, but you know, some people I'm sure will play that, especially when you have it hidden and you can play it at reaction speed, so you can kind of decide in a combat how much to commit to it. Really interesting play style that I don't necessarily think was required for Chaos to get more and more tools, but nevertheless, that's the world that we live in, that Chaos are getting a lot of strong cards even on top of the ones they already have. One card that I think people look at and be like, I don't know how good that card is, or at least like newer players might not see this card as very good, and I hope my read on this is right, and that's one that I'm actually kind of excited for in a weird way, is Scuttle Crab. People will look at a 2 energy 0 might unit and be like, wait, what? Why would I want that? The thing is, any card that replaces itself is very, very strong. Like, and any card that replaces itself and then has an effect on the game from that should never be underestimated. So for instance, Scuttle Crab, it costs 2, draw 1. Immediately replaces itself and gives you a body. The card specifies on it as well that it can both conquer and hold battlefields. So that means at a minimum, really, you're getting turn 1, play it, draw 1, get a body. Turn 2, conquer. Turn 3, or at least your opponent's turn 2, they then have to decide, do they want to take out the Scuttle Crab and then give you the information and the experience that comes with it, or do they allow you to maintain control of the battlefield, get whatever the bonus of the battlefield is, plus a hold point, plus then you have the ability to, you know, you're looking at green and what plays with it. You have combat tricks, you have buffs, you have lots of different combinations that can go in with the Scuttle Crab. So I think it's a really unassuming card that people will, like newer players and players that perhaps don't look at the efficiency of cards in the same way, may underestimate this card. I think that this strengthens a little bit of the early game in some ways. But that being said, until we see full deck list, I don't want to say that it's like a broken card, because I don't think it is. I just think it's potentially an extremely efficient card, which is always dangerous. It's always dangerous to give decks that want to ramp an efficient early game card. We had it in Magic a couple of years ago, a card called Up the Beanstalk. This isn't necessarily the same thing, but Up the Beanstalk basically replaced itself and then had an impact later in the game and was incredibly strong in multiple formats and got banned. So I don't think Scuttlecrab is quite the same, but nevertheless, I always look at an efficient card like that and I think that could be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Lots of other cards that came out in previous season. I will probably do a video as we get closer to release, looking at like the most impactful cards for competitive in the set. But there's a lot to touch on, a lot to go through. And honestly, I need to see people actually play with the cards first before we get a really good read on what actually works and what doesn't. Because, you know, we had a lot of learnings going from set 1, where set 1 was all about playing on curve, basically 2 power units or 2 energy units in order to scale your way through the game. And you just play a 2-drop, a 2-drop, a 2-drop, and you contest all the battlefields. Set 2, we learned that you do that against Draven and you just immediately lose the game. So we had a big learning of you have to pick and choose when you take combats and how that actually affected the game. Now I'm excited to see how that's going to play in set 3. We have a lot of different mechanics. And a lot of different things are going to change things. So I think everybody's read now on day 1 may not necessarily be the way that it is as we head towards our first tournament on set 3. But we still have tournaments on set 2 to go. We still have, obviously, Lille coming up for RQ Lille, which is next month, just under a month away. So we've still got a little bit of time to squeeze what's left of the meta out, as Detonate Draven has come to the top and a few other things. And I mean, Aurelia just won the other day at the Chinese Nationals, so who even knows what we've got left. I'm excited to see what people are playing. Speaking of the Chinese Nationals, thank you to Turn 'em Sideways for having me on their co-stream a little bit for day 2. Always enjoy joining the stream, always enjoy chatting with the team, and you know, taking people through some games that we just get to hang out and chill, and it's a little bit more relaxed than our typical broadcast. And a big thank you as well to the Turn 'em Sideways team for sending me some playmats and some mic counters. They're awesome. You can get yours on the Turn 'em Sideways shop as well. I'll make sure to link it down below and put some footage of how cool they look, because that Aurelia playmat is sick, and I cannot wait to play that at Nexus Nights. Makes me want to play Aurelia just to play it with a playmat and be completely aligned on getting my deck, my playmat, my sleeves, everything like that is Aurelia focused. Sadly, I think Aurelia is too complex a champion for me to actually really use to the efficiency of a player that is going to do justice to the playmat, but nevertheless, I'll just rock Aurora anyway, it's fine. I'll just keep playing Sivir and Misfortune until the end of set 2. That's the end of this video. I'm going to say thank you if you did tune in. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the Unleashed cards coming in set 3, and I'll see you soon.